What's going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show here on DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle. That would be at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show, looking back at the weekend of March the 3rd. Boy, March 3rd was a big day at Gulfstream Park. You had graded stakes races all over the place. We'll go over the vast majority of them. Some of them will be included in this week's stakes montage. The highlight of the races that we will recap is the Fountain of Youth. We'll talk about that momentarily. We'll also go over the big one out at Santa Anita, a big Kentucky Oaks prep, big Santa Anita Oaks prep, and the Santa Isabel, even with a little bit of a wet racetrack and a key scratch. And again, we'll go over some of those other races from the montage, lead you in with some of the weekend's best performances from a buyer standpoint, and take a look at what's to come this week on the DRF TV schedule of events. If you listen to this show in podcast version, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com for all of your latest stuff here from DRF TV on the YouTube channel, as well as video.drf.com. Let's not bury the lead anymore. Let's dive into this weekend's big race. That was the Fountain of Youth for the 3-year-olds. It was the return of the 2-year-old champion, Good Magic. This is the field that contested the race. It was a field of 9. Good Magic went off as your 3-5 favorite for Chad Brown, Jose Ortiz. He came in with a 100 buyer in that most recent run. That was 4 months ago now in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That he sort of used as a springboard into winning champion 2-year-old honors at the Eclipse Awards just a few weeks back down at Gulfstream Park. Everything just culminated here with his return to the races, and all eyes were on him. He was the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Would he be the favorite after the race? Pete Aiello with the call.
It's a gap of 3 to Machismo, who finds his best ride and may turn in. The leader promises fulfilled, tries to do it every step. Strike Power to the attack one more time. Good Magic has been defeated, then Machismo. Less than a 16th to go. The leader is still Promises Fulfilled, and Promises Fulfilled will spring the upset to win the Fountain of Youth under Irad Ortiz Jr.
The answer to that question is no. He would not be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby after this race because Promises Fulfilled wins the Fountain of Youth at a mile and 16th on the main track. He pays $38.40 on top for Dale Romans. Running second is Strike Power for Mark Henning, stretching out to 2 turns for the first time. $6.40 to place. And Good Magic, the 3-5 favorite, is defeated. He runs third, $2.20 to show. The $2 exacta comes back $230 even. The $1 try, $10.46, comes back $254.70. And the 10-cent superfecta, $10.469. $271.18. That included Machismo at 37-1, running fourth. Let's talk about the winner for the time being. Promises Fulfilled is a 3-year-old. He is by Shackelford. He is out of the Marquetry Mare Marquee Delivery. He's trained by Dale Romans, owned by Robert Barron, bred by David Jacobs in the state of Kentucky. He is 3 of 4 lifetime. He is 4 for 4 in the money. Over $327,000 in career earnings. He earned a 96 buyer speed figure, winning the Fountain of Youth, a 121 time form U.S. rating. Both of those are competitive numbers. They're not the tops as far as the 3-year-olds are concerned, but for this time of year, they are perfectly competitive and perfectly reasonable to think that these are numbers that can be built upon. Came home in 31-2, very, very good number. Couple things, though, that we need to talk about with the race as a whole. Gulfstream Park, early on, it seemed, on the main track, seemed to be a little bit speed-friendly. Some of those middle races on the main track, a little bit more open to horses coming from a little bit off the pace. But still, it's Gulfstream. You don't want to be coming from 100 out of it. And then the Fountain of Youth. The Fountain of Youth was an absolute merry-go-round. No one was making up any ground, save Machismo and Marconi, but they were settling for nothing more than minor awards. 4th and 5th place as far as purse money is concerned. The runner-up, Strike Power. He broke toward the inside from post 4. He ultimately actually broke from the 3rd stall in the gate. Got to the outside immediately when Promises Fulfilled cleared off from the far outside, stalked throughout, did some good things, did some bad things. Just kind of a merry-go-round. Good Magic, no excuse whatsoever. Out in the clear, looking good, ready to roll. Jose gets into him a little bit going into the far turn. He begins to come up. And then when the real running started, he had nothing. He was completely empty. Promises Fulfilled, it sounds like, according to Dale Romans, is going to probably come back in the Florida Derby in a few weeks down there at Gulfstream Park. No reason not to. He's probably going to be one of the choices in there. That good early speed is always valuable. He ran 3rd in the Kentucky Jockey Club in his graded stakes debut. That was back as a 2-year-old. Comes back off of a long layoff, so I can't use the layoff as the excuse for Good Magic, but we'll dive more into him momentarily because this horse himself was coming off of a long layoff. I think that he was just tighter and more ready to go. It was also worth noting that Roman scratched free drop Billy the morning of the Fountain of Youth. He figured to be the second choice in this race. He's been rerouted. He'll run this coming Saturday up at Aqueduct and the Gotham going one turn. Another story for another day. Promises Fulfilled is a nice horse, but this was far and away the best race of his career. Was part of it because of the racetrack? Certainly. Was part of it because Good Magic didn't fire his best shot? Certainly. But there's also a part of it that this is probably a pretty nice little horse. I don't think anyone is all of a sudden proclaiming that he is the horse to beat now as far as the 3-year-olds are concerned. But you're at a point now where when the big dog goes down, things are kind of up for grabs. You had one of the big dogs at Oaklawn go down with Mourinho. You had one of the big dogs at the Fairgrounds go down with Instilled Regard. We'll find out what happens this coming Saturday. And again, we'll kind of piggyback and pull all that together at the very end of this little recap here. But it's a good spot to be in if you're a fan of Promises Fulfilled or you're part of the connections, because you know you have basically punched your ticket into the starting gate. You get 50 points for the win in this race, you're good to go, all things considered. It'll be stunning if there, for some reason, 50 points wasn't enough to get in to the starting gate for the first Saturday of May. He sounds like he's in the race. He's good to go. Fingers crossed everything goes well. He'll come back for one final prep in the Florida Derby and then go on to Churchill Downs. I don't have any knocks, but I don't have anything glowing to say about this horse. He went out there, ran very well. Nice, pretty fast number. Hopefully he builds on it. If he does, then we'll consider him a little bit more seriously. But right now, I have no knock. He was fine. For what it's worth, Timeform US color-coded the racetrack on the main track at Gulfstream is slightly speed-friendly on Saturday afternoon. Strike Power is a fascinating horse to me from Mark Henning. He is very, very talented. No one's arguing that. But I don't think he has any idea what's going on yet. This is the first time going 2 turns. They've thrown a lot at him in a short amount of time. But he did everything wrong with his leads. He changed onto his right lead down the backside like he's supposed to do, but he never changed going all the way around the far turn until he hit about the quarter pole where he popped to his left lead, where traditionally you're supposed to pop to your right lead and get ready to go. Instead, he ran that final stretch on his left lead. I don't think this horse knows what he's doing yet, but the talent is very clearly there. He came home in 31-3. I thought it was a good effort from him, one that you can build on, and I almost feel like he's the one that I want coming out of this race, because if he ever figures out entirely what's supposed to be going on, I think he could be a force in this division. He needs to get a little bit faster, but going shorter distances, he's already proven that speed is not any sort of an issue when you're in that 102 in his career debut. Let's get to the big story, Good Magic. What do you do with Good Magic going forward? It sounds like, and by the way, Strike Power, if all goes well, they're going to go to the Florida Derby as well, so you get a rematch of the top 2. Chad Brown is saying that Good Magic will not go to the Florida Derby. Sounds like the Bluegrass is the most likely candidate for his next start. And Chad said, a little bit disappointing not to win, but considering he was coming off of a layoff and all these other things, a fine enough effort, we're pleased. I have to be honest. To me, this was a disaster. You can't have this. You can't have this from a horse that everybody was hyping up saying he was strictly the horse to beat, even more so than Bolt Doro. You got to give me more than that, because there was no real excuse. When you come up going into that far turn at about the half-mile pole, and it looks like whenever Jose's going to let his hands down, that this horse is just going to go and engulf those top 2, and there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing there. It leaves me wanting to see a heck of a lot more. So, okay, fine. He needed one, first race in 4 months. If you want to take that positive spin and say he's going to take a step forward, entirely fair. I just think with a horse that's supposed to be a monster, according to most people, he's supposed to do better than this. He came home in 32, so he probably got a little bit tired at the end. But of the top 5, he was the slowest come-home time in 32 seconds flat in that final 5/16. The first, second, fourth, and fifth place finishers all finished better than he did, and one of them was coming off of a layoff just about as long as he was, and that was Promises Fulfilled, the winner. There's a part of me that looks at it and says, you know what, he deserves a mulligan. But then there's also a part of me that says he's still won one race. And I know it was the biggest race for 2-year-olds, but he's on the best part of the track. He had a really, really good pace situation. It helped that some of the other horses were buried down on that bad rail. And it also helps that the horse that he had to beat, Bolt Oro, was hung 150 paths wide because of that just unfortunate situation breaking out of the gate, where really there was nothing that Corey Nakitani could have done. He was just kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't from the very beginning with that far outside post. Good Magic, I don't doubt that he's got some ability. But boy, I said last week in the preview, you can't have any hiccups. To me, this was a pretty serious hiccup. I understand it wasn't a disaster. He got some points. But it was not good. I don't think this was certainly not what I wanted to see. And I'd be stunned if there was anybody else that said that they thought that this was, this got a B+ or an A as far as a return to the races are concerned. This was very mediocre at best. Hopefully he's going to take a step forward here, because if he doesn't, things continue to just be a little bit in chaos at this point. Machismo, nice horse. Think that there's some races for him. If they chose to go on to the Florida Derby or they go one of the other routes, that's fine. He's going to need to up his game, but he did run on at the end. He came home fastest of anyone in 31-2, so the distance, maybe that's not a problem. Quality-wise, I'm still a little bit unsure where he stacks up, but there's no reason to think that he can't continue to improve. Marconi was wider than wide throughout, but it just feels like he's a bit of a plotter. I don't know what you want to do with him right now. At this point in the game, got to go. Maybe you turn him back to one turn. Storm Runner is one that I know everyone is going to be kind of chomping at the bit to try to get back to him wherever he shows up next, whether it's the Florida Derby or the Bluegrass or any of those other races, because he was going to make that move up the inside of Promises Fulfilled, starting onto the backside. I thought it was a brilliant job by Arad Ortiz, and the Ortiz boys had a hell of a day on Saturday at Gulfstream. It was just enough to sucker Joel Rosario to try to go into that, but there wasn't really enough room. Storm Runner has to check, doesn't go on with the run afterward. Barry Irwin with some not so kind things to say about the rider afterward. Look, I think it was just the perfect storm of scenario where there looked like there might have been a little bit of room. He tried to go knowing the way that the racetrack was playing, didn't get through. My only feeling is if he does get through, does the entire complexion of this race change because the pace picks up? Now, all of a sudden, is there something more for those closers to run at, and maybe it's not the merry-go-round. Maybe you get a similar result, but maybe it's not the merry-go-round just through and through that we saw ultimately play out. Who knows? Nothing more than just kind of throwing out some sort of conjecture and just guessing. But at this point, buttoning up this Fountain of Youth, this coming Saturday is even more important now, where you're going to have, it looks like, the showdown between Bolt Doro and McKinsey, and you're also going to have Free Drop Billy and anybody else running up in the Gotham at Aqueduct, and you're also going to have a big day of racing down at Tampa Bay Downs with the Tampa Bay Derby. So things will probably, I shouldn't say probably, hopefully things get a little bit clearer when we get through this coming weekend. If some of the big dogs go down this weekend, I tweeted before the race, if Good Magic loses, all hell breaks loose. If the big dogs don't get the job done this coming Saturday, then all hell really breaks loose. And if there's anybody with a 3-year-old, you're going to be coming out of the woodwork. You're going to have full gates for those final preps if the big boys don't do what they're supposed to do this coming weekend. We'll find out. Good Magic, a disappointing return to the races, and that's at the very least running third, but a good effort from the winner, Promises Fulfilled. Looks like the Florida Derby is the next step for each of the top two, Promises Fulfilled and Strike Power. The Oaks Prep at Gulfstream on Saturday afternoon was the Davona Dale. Let's take a look at that field. You had 8 fillies that decided to go postward and 1-turn mile. The heavy favorite in this spot was Jose Ortiz. Fly So High for Shug McGahee, the Phipps stable. Shug was looking for his 2,000th career victory. Figured to take a little bit of beating in here simply because on paper she was strictly the horse to beat from a speed figure standpoint, and there were a number of challengers, but they were all on the slower side. They were going to need to up their game considerably. There was some race riding that went on down the backside. Ultimately, it did not matter. Pete Aiello with the call.
He has the lead. Take Charge Paula tries to split horses. Fly So High on the outside. Cash has no place to go. 3/16 to go. Heaven has My Nikki. Tussles with Fly So High. Fly So High now gets a narrow lead. Heaven has My Nikki not going away without a fight. She's digging in gamely. Take Charge Paula is next, and then Sultry. But in deep stretch, it's a milestone victory for Shug McGahee. Win 2,000 in the Davona Dale with Fly So High.
Fly So High gets the job done as the 7-5 favorite. Pays $4.80 on top for victory number 2,000 for Shug McGahee. The number 6, Take Charge Paula, runs second, $3.40 to place. And the number 3, Heaven Has My Nikki, $4.80 to show. The $2 Exacta comes back $16.20. $1 Try, $8.63, comes back $47.40. And the 10-cent Superfecta, $8.631, $17.65. This is a 3-year-old filly for Shug and the Phipps stable named Fly So High. She is 3 or 4 lifetime, $190,000 in career earnings. She was bred by Mountain Brilliant Broodmares 2 LLC in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Jose Ortiz. Again, the Ortiz boys had a big day on Saturday. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the page. She is by Malibu Moon out of a quiet American mare named Quiet Flight. This is one of the rare Phipps mares, or horses just in general, that doesn't have some giant, crazy, gaudy pedigree, but she's good enough to read 3 of 4 thus far. She earns an 83 buyer here, a 106 time form U.S. rating. She was out in the clear throughout. It was a little bit more workmanlike than I think I had anticipated if she was going to get the job done, simply because she had such just a giant buyer edge on the rest of these girls. She actually regressed. She had come into this with some high 80s numbers. The 83 is a regression for her. It's also worth noting after the race, she was pulled up very, very quickly by Jose, strictly for precautionary reasons. It sounds like she's okay. Shug has said, as of now, everything looks okay, so knock on wood, she stays that way. Fine effort, considering she was floated about 15 paths wide by Paco Lopez on Take Charge Paula early on. Did not make a difference, but I understand what Paco was trying to do, float the favorite as wide as possible. I don't know. I mean, did it affect his horse any? She ran second, so it's hard for me to say that it cost her anything, really. She's just not as good as Fly So High. I think the big horse that you want to take a note of coming out of this race, because this was a relatively slow race. I don't think we've got Oaks fillies in here. Maybe you want to give Cash the benefit of the doubt. She didn't have the cleanest of goes. Javier had her in a really, really good position down on the inside, rounding the far turn. Just no seam opened up for. Finally, she got jockeyed around a little bit, pinched, shut off, finally found a seam, came through a little bit evenly late, didn't really offer any kind of kick. There's a part of me that wonders, is some clean run, does she run a little bit better? But I have to be honest, as a whole, this Davona Dale, we took forever talking about that first race of the Fountain of Youth. This one, kind of the counterpart for the 3-year-old girls. I don't have a heck of a lot to say. I'm going to be surprised if we hear anything as far as Oaks is concerned with these girls. Fly So High is nice. She shows up. She runs her race. Take Charge Paula, really nice. They're honest. For what it's worth, the opening 2 fractions, according to Timeform, were color-coded blue, so it was a slower pace. Favorite horses on or near the early lead, which certainly helped on a day like Saturday, if you believe the color coding of the racetrack bias situation, based on our Timeform folks, where they had it favoring horses on or near the early lead with that sort of speed bias. I don't know that we're dealing with horses that can run with possibly the girls on the West Coast, and this is an easy way for us to segue out to the West Coast for the Santa Isabel. But first things first, Davona Dale wrapped up by Fly So High. Shug gets number 2,000, a victory for Jose and the Phipps Stables, 83 buyer in victory. So maybe the 3-year-old prep down at Gulfstream wasn't all that spectacular. How about the one out at Santa Anita? Let's take a look at the field for the Santa Isabel. You had a major scratch leading up to this race in the morning line favorite Dream Tree. Because of the wet conditions, this race was run over a wet, fast racetrack on the main surface out at Santa Anita. They took some serious rain over a number of days, but that did not stop Midnight Bisou from showing up. She went off as the 1-5 favorite, and boy, did she put on a show. Michael Rona with the call.
The stretch by the odds-on favourite, Midnight Bisou, as Spring Lily drops back to third. They approach the 8th pole in the Santa Isabel, and Midnight Bisou, let go by Smith, shoots clear from 13 squared. Midnight Bisou, after breaking her maiden in a graded stakes, now conquers 2 turns in the Santa Isabel. She wins by a little over 2 lengths to 13 squared, 8 clear of Spring.
Midnight Bisou, much the best, winning the Santa Isabel, earns a 94 buyer speed figure and pays $2.60 on top. 13 squared first time with the blinkers off. Thought she ran very well for Bob Baffert. $4.20 to place. And the number 2 Spring Lily, $2.20 to show in her first try, going 2 turns. The $1 exacta comes back $4.40. 50-cent try comes back $6.10. And the $1 superfecta, 3-4-2-5, $40.40. Midnight Bisou is 2 of 4 lifetime. She is 4 of 4 in the exacta, $210,000 in career earnings. She is owned by Allen Racing LLC and Bloom Stable Racing LLC. Jeffrey Bloom, trained by Bill Spar, bred by Woodford Thoroughbreds in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Mike Smith. And you see the pedigree at the bottom of the page. She's by Midnight Loot out of a Repent mare named Diva Delight. This was a 94 buyer, a 117 Timeform US rating for Midnight Bisou. You saw her ears were up and pricked at the end of this race. She galloped out strong. She came home in 29-4. She relaxed kindly off the pace. First time 2 turns. Came with that big 3-4 path move on the far turn. I thought she was tremendous. To me, she is strictly the horse to beat as far as the 3-year-old fillies are concerned. No disrespect to Dream Tree. No disrespect to Monomoy Girl. No disrespect to the girls that ran at Gulfstream on Saturday. I think Midnight Bisou is the horse to beat right now. To me, she should be the favorite for the Kentucky Oaks. The thing is, and I shouldn't say good news, for anyone else, that's still a ways away. We have 2 months till the first Friday in May. I would imagine the Santa Anita Oaks is going to be next on the docket for her. Some of these other girls, Spring Lily, it'll be interesting to see what they choose to do with her. Do they try to turn her back, or do they just kind of go through a condition? Keep in mind, she just broke her maiden in the most recent start. I thought 13 squared, it may have been a combination of the wet track and the blinkers coming off for her for Baffert. I thought she ran very well as well, though. No match for Midnight Bisou. I think Midnight Bisou, though, she could be that kind. I've been waiting for one of these girls to really step up, and it always felt like it was Midnight Bisou and Dream Tree Because keep in mind, Dream Tree defeated her on the square in both starts that they've had against one another. I think all of us in the racing form anyway, in the studio, have kind of felt that Midnight Bisou may just be a more talented filly than Dream Tree. But it's still, the fact remains that Dream Tree has beaten her in the 2 lifetime starts, the 2 heads-up matchups that they have had. We'll find out if they do get one more sort of clash before that first Friday in May. But a giant effort here from Midnight Bisou. I think she's the goods. 94 buyer, 117 time form U.S. rating. McDermott was the featured event on turf Saturday at Gulfstream Park. This was the field going 1 mile and 3/8 on the grass. You had the return of Sadler's Joy, who ran 4th in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. Grade 1 winner up at Saratoga. Arguably one of the better turf horses that we have here in North America. He comes with a serious late kick. The question is, you got to time it just right. Julian Leperoux knows this horse better than anyone, and he timed it perfectly again. Pete Aiello with the stretch run.
And then Big Ben and Nessie, and they're at the top of the stretch. One go, all go, still has the lead. Mark it off into the clear to try to get to him. Oscar nominated is next with Mutasir. Here's Sadler's Joy from dead last, and he's rolling home. Sadler's Joy is going to try to go last to first, and he will. Sadler's Joy and Leperoux going away in the McDermott. What a run.
Sadler's Joy returns a winner, gets the job done in the McDermott, $5.80 on top. One go, all go. The pace setter reluctantly faded at the very end, only to lose by 3/4 of a length. Broke my heart. I thought he was home. $11 to place. And the number 9, Nessie, runs third. Nessie likes to accumulate those minor awards. Does so again here at odds of 11 to 1, $6.60 to show. The $2 exacta comes back $59.40. $1 try comes back $223.80, and the 10-cent super 139.12 comes back $141.76. Sadler's Joy is a 5-year-old. He is owned by Woods Lane Farm, bred by Woods Lane Farm, LLC, out of Kentucky, trained by Tom Albertrani, ridden to victory again by Julian Leperoux. You see the pedigree. He is by Kitten's Joy out of a Dynaformer mare named Dynair. He is 6 of 15 lifetime, over $1.3 million in career earnings. This is a horse with a serious late kick, earned a 101 buyer speed figure in this event. Sounds like, according to Tom Albertrani, he's possible for the Pan American on March the 31st if the training goes well and he comes out of this race in good shape. Came home in 23-3. Again, the timing of a ride for a horse like this is critical, because if you let him go too early and he makes the front, he's shown in the past he'll pull himself up. But you run the risk of getting some traffic trouble. You run the risk of mistiming that ride and coming on too late and just missing by a little bit. This was a beautiful ride by Leperoux. The water's going to get deeper when you get the returns of Beach Patrol, and at some point the Europeans will start coming over for Aidan O'Brien and company like that. But this horse is as good as any in these longer distance races, 1 3/8, 1.5 miles. That big potent late kick, a 126 time form U.S. rating. Good effort from the runner-up, One Go All Go. He tried. This is what he likes to do. Go out there, set the pace, try to hang around for a piece. He earns a 100 and a 126 time form U.S. rating as well. Nessie, I already touched on it. Nessie likes to run second and third a lot. He could be the ultimate underneath key. Doesn't like to win races very often, but he can be very, very valuable, as evident here. Oscar nominated. Good effort, all things considered. He won that most recent start in the McKnight down at Gulfstream. 98 buyer here. Considering the wide outside post from the draw, having to come over, show a little bit of speed. I thought Jose Ortiz did everything he possibly could. Kept this horse together. Far from embarrassed. A good effort from him to run fourth. Mark it off some in TMA. Mook Taser. All those horses came along, and they just picked up some pieces a little bit here and there at the end. I guess a little bit of a disappointing effort from Gold Shield, but I kind of expect this from Gold Shield. Maybe a little bit of a disappointing effort from Patterson Cross for Bill Mott off the long layoff, but he was very wide throughout every step of this race. There's a part of me that thinks he will move forward, but boy, the difference between moving forward and then being able to run with a horse like Sadler's Joy, we're talking about a very, very major difference there. We'll find out. Maybe he can get back to it, because I do think deep down he has a ton of ability, Patterson Cross, but no one was capable of getting the job done more than Sadler's Joy on Saturday afternoon. Off the long layoff, you would think he's only going to step forward with more distance and with a little bit more fitness. A big effort here, though. He gets the job done in the McDermott with a 101 buyer and a 126 time form U.S. rating. Long distance race on grass for the girls on Saturday at Gulfstream was the very one, 1 mile and 3/16. This was the field, a field of 7. Favorite ultimately at post time was Mike Maker's Daring Duchess. She figured to have a soft go of it on the front end. Didn't look to be much pace signed on, and that needed to be factored in for a number of runners. Maybe some that wanted to come from farther out of it needed to adapt a little bit. One of those most notably being Holy Helena, who was never really a confirmed one-run closer, but she liked to do her running from mid-pack. wow, is she just taking her game to the next level here as a 4-year-old? Here's Pete Aiello with the call.
Bid is stalled and the trailer is still Wested and the leader is still Daring Duchess. Daring Duchess off the top of the turn on top. Holy Helena into the attack mode now and she's coming on well. Look at Holy Helena level off. Holy Helena with a blink of an eye blows by Daring Duchess and she's on her way to a graded stake score. Holy Helena impressively.
Holy Helena gets the job done, pays $9.40 on top, winning a graded stakes race, the very one. The runner-up is Daring Duchess, the pace setter. She is second, $3 to place, and the number one Palinodi runs third, $4.60 to show. The $2 exacta comes back $25.40. $1 try comes back $72.10, and the 10-cent super 4315 comes back $26.56. Holy Helena is a 4-year-old filly at this point in her career. She is trained by Jimmy Jerkins. She's owned by Stronach Stables. She was bred by Adena Springs in Ontario, which is Frank Stronach. You see the sire is Ghost Zapper. She is by a Holy Bull mare named Holy Grace. She is 5 of 8 lifetime, just under $900,000 in career earnings. What else is there to say? She shows up. She runs her race. This race was even more impressive, I think, than maybe it just looks at face value. The 92 buyer, it's difficult to get a big buyer when there's not a big pace signed on because your final time isn't going to be all that fast. She came home in 39 and 3. That is just ballistic racehorse time, and Timeform US factors in the pace scenario. So the fact that she closed in to 3 different segments that were color-coded as blue, the interior fractions of this race favoring horses on or near the early lead, and she closed into them, they gave her credit. They give her a 125 Timeform rating as far as the number is concerned. The raw number, I believe, was a 116, but because of the slow pace that she rallied into, bumped all the way up to a 125. This was a tremendous effort from her. Jimmy Jerkins says she's been training better than ever. They're going to have to wait and see where they bring her back because now she's 2 for 2 on turf. You know she loves the synthetic up at Woodbine. She's not a dirt filly. So you're going to have to figure out, map something out where you want to bring her back. But boy, she looks like she's tremendous. She's come back better than ever. The 92 buyer is one of her best of her career. Daring Duchess, disappointing effort. But at the same time, there's a part of me that says if you just strip Holy Helena from the race, she wins this one. She wins another graded stakes race. Her game is go out there, set soft fractions, take advantage. But the problem is when you allow everyone into the run, I understand you want to ration out that speed, but you got to use it to your advantage at some point. So when everyone kind of, that accordion effect happens, when everyone's really, really tight with one another, and you start to kick at the same point as the other girls, your kick is not as good. It's not as potent as that of a Holy Helena or even some of these other horses. The good news was a horse like Wested was just way too far back, Empress of the Nile too far back, so they weren't really ever heard from. But when you get a horse like Holy Helena that can sit within a length or length and a half, rounding the far turn, and you try to kick at the same time, your kick is just not as potent as hers is. I'd always love to see anyone let the speed out a little bit. And you know what? If you get nipped at the end, so be it. But try to put a length or 2 or 3 on your opposition. Try to make them come and catch you, as opposed to trying to start your run at the same time. Just a little bit of a disappointing effort there. I thought she should have probably got the job done with these fractions particularly, but then again, I didn't think Holy Helena was going to run a hole in the wind like she did at the end. Big effort from her. Palinodi, Empress of the Nile, Wested, everyone else below. I suppose if you're coming from the back of the pack, don't hold it against them too much because, again, the pace wasn't that fast. But at the same time, they all seem like they're a notch or 2 below the top 2 in here. Daring Duchess, she'll show up. She'll run her race. Holy Helena, she looks like she could be a player as far as the older fillies and mares are concerned on turf this year. Big effort for her and Jimmy Jerkins. 92 buyer, 125 Timeform US rating. Let's go to the 3-year-old fillies on turf. This is the field for the Here Comes the Bride. You had a field of 8 signed on in here. These are 3-year-old fillies. The horse to beat was The Way I Am for Graham Motion. She's done nothing wrong since she's come over here to North America. She's gone out and just run her race time and time again. More often than not, it's been good enough to get the job done. She was on the heels of a stakes victory at Gulfstream in her most recent start as well. But you had some interesting fresh faces coming into here, into this spot anyway. Amertume for Todd Pletcher on the heels of a maiden score in her career debut. She was very, very green, but she looked impressive. Brittata, another one on the heels of a maiden score. That was for Chad Brown. She was one that finally it seemed like she'd put it all together. Then you had some wild cards in here like Princess Warrior for Kenny McPeak and a number of other interesting runners. None of it really mattered, though, because the horse to beat going into this ultimately proved to be best. Here's Pete Aiello with the call.
Follow the move up the inside now, and they're at the top of the stretch. My favorite gift spins off the corner to try to spring the upset. Amartum is next. The Way I Am secures racing room toward the rail. Brittada's on the outside. The Way I Am with a rail running victory now as The Way I Am is kicking away. The Way I Am and jockey Jose Ortiz, too good. They won it by 2.5.
The Way I Am continues her winning ways. Gets the job done in the Here Comes the Bride. Pays $5 on top. Amartum for Todd Pletcher. Duggan Gamely to run second. $3.60 to place. And Brittada, $2.80 to show for Chad. $2 exact to 3.5 comes back 16. $21 trifecta 3.54. $21.50 in the 10-cent superfecta 3.541. $5.78. The Way I Am is a 3-year-old filly. She is trained by Graham Motion. She is owned by, all right, here we go, a mouthful. Great Point Stables LLC, dubbed the Elkstone Group LLC, and Bethlehem Stables LLC. She's 5 of 8 lifetime. She's over $231,000 in career earnings. She was bred in France. She was ridden to victory by Jose Ortiz, a heady ride, shooting up the wood like that, saving every inch of ground. And boy, the late turn of foot from this girl is serious. You can't argue that. She is by The Way You Are out of a Dancilli mare named Water Feature. 84 Beyer speed figure in victory here for The Way I Am. 102 time form U.S. rating. You want to talk about late turn of foot. And I know she saved every inch of ground, but I'm not going to look at that and hold that against her. Sure, she had a perfect trip, but my goodness, did she kick like an absolute mule down the lane. You look and see the second, third, and fourth place finishers. I think they all ran fine. Amartum came home in 29 flat. Brittada came home in 28 and 3, almost 28 and 4, and Princess Warrior came home in 28 and 2. The Way I Am came home in 28 and 1 and absolutely looked like a powerhouse, and she was really kind of eased up down at the very final 50 yards of the race. I thought this was a tremendous performance, and again, she saved all the ground. I get it, and I understand why people say you don't want to be betting horses off of perfect trips. But the fact of the matter is this is a horse that shows up and shows that big late kick each and every time. And she's shown that she can be a little adaptable. Most of the time she's going to come from way off of it, but she can sit mid-pack a little bit. It's not as though she's just that confirmed Sadler's Joy type of just one run, take them all the way to the back, and make that big old move. I think she can be a little bit versatile. She can adapt a little bit. She's a really nice filly. I think Motion's going to continue on with her. Where she shows up next, we'll find out. Motion's called her the Energizer Bunny, where she just wants to keep going, and she's fresh. She was a high weight in this race if you're a fan or you believe in the weight. I've made it clear I'm kind of indifferent on weight, but at the end of the day, she was the high weight at 120. All the other girls carried between 114 and 118. I thought this was a really good effort. I think she's impressive. I think she just continues to improve. The 84 Beyer, I wonder if she just continues on that upward trajectory. If she shows up in the next race, does she get up to that 90 threshold? Does she get close to it anyway? This time of year for 3-year-old fillies on turf, this is nothing to sneeze at. I think you got a nice one here, and I'm sure the connections, everybody involved, they've got their eyes on bigger prizes, probably most notably the Belmont Oaks a few months from now. That's right around 4th of July at Belmont Park, but for the time being, you arguably have the best turf filly as far as 3-year-olds are concerned in the country. The Way I Am, all she does is win. She gets the job done, and Here Comes the Bride. The counterpart to the girls was the boys. This was the field for the Palm Beach, a grade 3 event, mile and a 16th on the turf, field of 7 signed on. Your favorite going into this was Speed Franco. Speed Franco had most recently won a stakes race down at Gulfstream Park. He's a very, very gutsy horse. He likes to go out to the lead. The good news, if you were a fan of Speed Franco in this spot, there didn't look to be much speed signed on, so he could get out there and dictate things all on his own. Very similar to the way that Holy Helena did in the very one. The difference was, this time around, you had a horse like Maraud who had a little bit of tactical speed, and he could press the pace. And you know what? He seems like, maturity-wise, he's starting to put it all together, Pete Aiello with the call.
Between horses, that's Maraud back to Nipawan Therapist, and they're at the top of the stretch. Speed Franco has the lead. Maraud comes to call hawkish on the outside, and Therapist less than 1/8 of a mile to go. Speed Franco pins his ears and tries to hold off an on-rushing Maraud. Maraud nails him on the wire. It's Maraud to win the Palm Beach by a neck. Speed Franco second.
Maraud just grinds away and gets the better of Speed Franco by a neck. Gets the job done, pays $7 on top, winning the Palm Beach. Speed Franco, a gutsy effort. He's an honest horse. He's a cool horse, easy to root for. Runs second, $2.80 to place. And Therapist in his first start as a 3-year-old for Christophe Clement, $3 to show. The $2 exact comes back $15.20. The $1 try comes back $25.70. And the 10-cent superfecta comes back $7.80. $1.83. This is a 3-year-old trained by Todd Pletcher is Maraud. He's a nice horse. Seems like he's finally putting it all together. 3 of 5 lifetime. Perfect 5 for 5 in the money. Over $164,000 in career earnings. Owned by Treadway Racing Stable. Bred by John R. Penn and Frank Penn in Kentucky. Ridden to victory by John Velasquez. You see the pedigree at the bottom of the page. He is by Blame out of an Empire Maker mare named Unbridled Empire. Blame. He's by Arch. You get all that sort of Arch blood. They seem to be able to run on broken glass. They can run on anything. This is a nice little horse. I was a little bit dubious of him as a 2-year-old. I didn't love him, but it seems like he's putting things together. Now, admittedly, he had a pretty good setup here, considering there wasn't a ton of pace signed on. He was the one pressing throughout. I know a lot of people say that that's not the best scenario to be in because you're the one forced to do the dirty work. I would argue if you're as talented as the pace setter, very similar to what we saw with the whole Daring Duchess situation in Holy Helena, if you're as talented, if I'm going to start my run at the same time as you, I'll take my chances. I'm going to be right there. I understand you're going to have something left in the tank if you're the pace setter, but to me, that's still a pretty cushy trip. Good effort all around from Maraud. He came home in 28 flat. He got an 86 Beyer and a 114 Timeform US rating. Speed Franco, 85 Beyer, 111 Timeform US rating. Came home in 28 and 2. Your third and fourth place finishers may be the ones that you also would like to keep an eye on going forward. With Therapist coming off that long layoff for Clement, he's probably going to be tighter second time around. I'd imagine you'll get better when they go up to New York with him. He still just seems like a grinder to me, though. I don't know that I love anything about him. He's okay. Don't get me wrong. That 82 Beyer, I think he's going to trend upward, and he's going to get better. There's no question about it. The horse I am most interested in is Hawkish. I liked him. I picked him going into this spot, and I thought all things considered for the second lifetime start, first time against winners, and some good runners at that, I thought this was a tremendous effort, especially on the far turn. When he made that big, bold brush, and he went from basically last to challenging for second, only a length off the pace, I thought that was a tremendous effort. There was no pace signed on. He had to go and do all that dirty work there. To me, that's a heck of a lot harder and a more difficult trip than the one that Maraud drew in here. And okay, he flattened out down the lane when the real running started, but considering he had to kind of make a half-mile move and he flattened out down the lane, I'm not going to hold that against him. I think there's a lot of positive and a lot of upside for Hawkish. If you're a fan of this horse, if you're part of the connections, I think there's a lot to like about him. I think you're going to hear a lot from the name Hawkish going forward for Jimmy Toner. But make no mistake about it, Maraud was the best horse this day. Sat just off the pace, ran down a game Speed Franco, and another gutsy effort from Speed Franco himself. But Maraud gets the job done for Pletcher and Velasquez. 86 Beyer, 114 Timeform US rating. As I said at the top, and as we say with most of these shows, the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show, there's just only so much time. And this is already going to be a really long one, considering how long we went with the Fountain of Youth. But there were other stakes races down at Gulfstream on Saturday. And there was a nice 3-year-old filly race up at Aqueduct on Saturday. We want to get to those real quick, so we throw them into a montage. Here's this weekend's montage.
And he's still last with Derby Champagne, and they're at the top of the stretch. Here's Hoagie. 9-year-old veteran sweeps up to take the lead now. Galleon Mast into the clear for Luis Saez. Going to try to get after him when it matters. March is third, then Conquest Sandman. But Hoagie is going to win it. Hoagie and Jockey Irad Ortiz Jr. to win it by 3.5. Galleon Mast second, March third, then Conquest Sandman and Buckenfellers. Here's a run from 8-Town. Here's a run from the Big Gray Mr. Jordan and Classic Rock Splits horses. Pace is melting down. That's good news for favorable outcome. He's going to try to find some place to go, but Classic Rock gets the jump. Down the outside and Sweet on the Lakeys for the local horses. In deep stretch, Classic Rock has the lead. It will be Classic Rock for the Reeves and Louis Saez to win it by 2.5. Close for second. Sweet on the Ladies are 8. Back is Storm the Hill and Island Reward, and they're at the top of the stretch. 3/4, 113 and 3. Team of Teams still finding up front. Team of Teams is kicked away. Team of Teams with a 5-length lead now. Celestine wondered what happened. Down the outside, Island Reward, Grizzle shaking free. Team of Teams all the way under Johnny V.
Guided, trying to find room between horses. As the field turns for home, the whip comes out on War Heroine, trying to finish the job. She's got a host of pursuers. My Miss Lily desperately seeking room. Gets shut off by Sarah Street, who's up to take the lead. Midnight Disguise is finding her best stride in the center of the track. Sarah Street, the leader. Midnight Disguise, this big, imposing filly, takes off late. And Midnight Disguise wins the Busher going away. Sarah Street was second. My Miss Lily third.
That was the rest of the stakes action from Gulfstream on Saturday, as well as the Busher. Boy, Midnight Disguise. She looks like a sea monster out there. She's a big, good-looking filly. We'll find out. It sounds like Kentucky Oaks is what they have as far as the long-term goal, and rightfully so. All she does is go out and run very well. think she's a nice filly there, Midnight Disguise, when she wins the Busher. Some other impressive efforts there as well, between Hoagie and Classic Rock, you name it, they're all out there. Very, very impressive efforts all around on Saturday afternoon. Let's find out if any of those from the montage or any of them from the recaps come up here in this weekend's best as far as the best performances from a Beyer speed figure standpoint. Doesn't matter age, sex, surface, distance, we got it all covered for you. Here it is. This is the weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figures are concerned. Let's start off right at the top. The 3-year-old males on dirt, promises fulfilled. Talked about him at the top. 96 Beyer winning the Fountain of Youth. Sounds like he has a date in the Florida Derby and that final prep leading into the first Saturday in May, the Kentucky Derby. 3-year-old females. We've talked about Midnight Bisou. I think she's tremendous. I love everything about her. 94 Beyer winning the Santa Isabel on that wet fast track out at the Great Race Place. 3-year-old males on turf. We just saw Maraud in the Palm Beach in 86 Beyer. 3-year-old fillies. We just saw The Way I Am. She earned an 84 and Here Comes the Bride, but also a horse called Mamanu. 84 Beyer in a maiden special weight event, going 5/8 of a mile on the turf at Gulfstream. She also earned an 84. So co-highest Beyers for the 3-year-old fillies on turf this past weekend. Older males on dirt, Harlan Punch up at Aqueduct in an optional claimer. He earns a 100 Beyer speed figure. Older females, Sister Khan, a 90 Beyer speed figure in a non-winners of 2 other than down at the fairgrounds. Older males on turf, another tie. Hoagie in the Canadian Turf with a 101. Sadler's Joy with a 101 in the McDermott. Both of those races came down at Gulfstream Park. And the older females on turf, Holy Helena, a 92 Beyer speed figure winning the very one. She is 2 for 2 on turf. And onward and upward for Jimmy Jerkins. There is the list. Enjoy it. Those are the best performances from a Beyer speed figure standpoint this past weekend all across the country. Let's take a quick look at the DRF TV schedule of events coming up this weekend, or this week, I should say. If you are watching this show live right now, you've already seen the DRF Players podcast, which is always good stuff with Peter Thomas Fornatale and Jonathan Kinchin. I'm sure they're going to have plenty covered as far as the World Horse Players Tour. If you're new to that, check that out on Twitter and all the other things that Fornatale has written about this exciting new development. You can qualify for that event out at Santa Anita on Preakness Saturday, or Preakness weekend, I should say. That is over on DRF Tournaments. As far as stakes action is concerned, this upcoming Saturday is giant. So you're going to have the big one out at Santa Anita, the big one at Aqueduct, and the big one at Tampa Bay. Derby Watch will have you covered with Jay Privman and Mike Watchmaker. You'll also have Mike Watchmaker with this weekend's Weekend Warrior. Possibly we'll have something as far as the Watchmaker Watch, depending on how much fluctuation there has been there. You'll have Race of the Days all over the place, sponsored by DRF Bets. You'll have DRF Bet Spot Plays. You'll have all sorts of good stuff. Head on over to DRF Video. That is video.drf.com, as well as the Daily Racing Form's YouTube channel for all the latest as far as your videos are concerned. Again, if you're watching this live, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Form social media pages, that would be at DRF Inside Post on Twitter, and the Facebook page for the Daily Racing Form. Thank you for doing so. Most of you listen, though, in podcasts. You've got YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. Apologies if this one went a little bit long, but guess what? When we've got big weekends like this, there's a lot to digest, and we have big performances that could be potentially very, very important as we get closer to the first Saturday in May, and even for that matter, the first Friday in May with the Kentucky Oaks. So thank you for sticking around. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that is @Bernier_Matt. Questions, comments, concerns, anything that you want to see changed about the show, the recap, or the preview edition. Speaking of the preview edition, that will come to you later this week. It will air on Friday at noon, part of that block that you're accustomed to, the DRF Players Podcast at 11, the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition at noon, and the latest edition of Out of the Gate following that from all of the usual suspects. We will record that when that will be up and good to go Friday afternoon at noon. I will be down at Tampa Bay Downs this coming Saturday for Tampa Bay Derby. We'll have a little bit of a seminar, myself and Marty McGee. We'll go over some good things for DRF Bets as well, get you hooked up with some promotional things, get you tied in with all the latest and greatest as far as the betting is concerned here from the Daily Racing Form. So best of luck the rest of the week. Thanks for sticking around. Hope this was a good one again. Any kind of questions, comments, concerns, fire away at me on Twitter. Best of luck until we speak again this coming Friday in the preview edition and get you ready for another big weekend of 3-year-old preps leading to the Kentucky Derby. Best of luck.